Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to discuss the price action of Bitcoin, as people are quite fearful right now that the top could potentially be in, that Bitcoin's about to crash to the downside, and as we all know that when Bitcoin decides to do something crazy, that it can be very disruptive to the alt sector. Being that I cover a lot of the alts on this channel, I thought it'd be a good idea to do a little bit of a video here and let you know what I see within the Bitcoin chart, as it's always a good idea to keep Bitcoin on our radar. So right here, we are seeing Bitcoin under a little bit of pressure. What we're seeing that the 10 and 21 crossing through the 55, leaving all three of those as well as the 89 with a negative slope to the downside. What we also see happening here is we see that Bitcoin gave us a lower low for the first time in a little while, at least on a daily chart, and then confirmed a lower high. And as of right now, working on a lower low. So in other words, daily downtrend in progress. Now, I don't necessarily view that as a death sentence per se for the long term for Bitcoin, but it does imply a little bit further downside. If we drop down to the RSI, we see that the RSI is in the bearish control zone, but it is angled to the upside, so might make an attempt to get out of there. But we do see that the exponential moving average has a fairly aggressive slope to the downside as well, so that is implying a little bit of downside pressure here. Drop down to the stochastics, we see them nosediving into the bearish exhaustion zone here, so also implying some downside. And on the MACD, we're seeing a fresh bar of negative momentum get printed here as the moving averages continue to dive downwards. However, I do see some glimmers of hope. And I'm going to point a couple things out here on the daily chart. And that is between, I'm just going to haphazardly draw this in like so. So we're seeing that Bitcoin's working on a lower low. Now, I'd never front run this kind of stuff. I always look for confirmations. But something that's baking within the chart that I see is we see the lower low in price action here, but we're seeing a higher low potentially get formed on the RSI here, known as Class A bullish divergence. And I'm sure many of you are already aware of what that is. But for those of you that don't, you can also see it here on the histogram as well. You see that pretty big island of negative momentum on this low right here. And then we have a smaller island of momentum being built on this potential low here. Now, what would confirm this for me is if I'm just going to come back to the price action here, is what I'm going to look for. And I'll put a little horizontal on my chart so you can all see this. But right around this area here, if I see a daily candle body come up and close back up above $50,000, this horizontal here, that is going to confirm this as another low on the market, and that would confirm that bullish divergence, and that could cause a pretty good move to the upside, likely up to the 55 here, around 54,000 at the very least, and perhaps it undoes some of this damage that we're seeing within the chart. But we do need to see that confirmation first. In about 7 hours and 46 minutes from the time of recording, we are going to get the daily candle body closure as well as a weekly candle body closure for Bitcoin. And well, we know that Sundays can be quite crazy. So it's kind of like one of those buckle up scenarios. It's hard to predict what the whales are going to do, but they get pretty whaley around that time. Usually around the weekly candle body closure, it gets crazy within this market. So we're going to have to get past that closure first, see what happens there. And of course, the traditional markets are going to open up tomorrow on Monday, and that can be another pretty crazy day for all kinds of fuckery. So that's usually when you see the manipulation, the whales at play. So we're going to have to get through the whales first. But at the very least, at least from a technical perspective, we're seeing that if Bitcoin puts in a lower low here on the daily, well, we're going to have some daily Class A bullish divergence. Now, there's some other things to pay attention to on the weekly here. So when I toggle this out to a weekly, we see that Bitcoin is coming into contact with the yellow 21 exponential moving average. And so far, the candle body is living up above that 21. Now, if I take us back into time here to the last bull run for Bitcoin, so in the context of a weekly uptrend, higher highs and higher lows along the way, we see that Bitcoin likes to come in and tuck into that 21 on its greater corrections. We see that right here by that wick. We see it on this cluster price action here. See this wick kind of shoot down below it there. But if I fast forward into time here a little bit, we see it off these candle bodies here, as well as this wick right here. Now, when I grab my price range tool and I measure some of these, we can see from that wick high down to that wick low there, that was a 38% pullback approximately. From this wick here down to there was 36%. We can see from these candle bodies here down to that wick low is 40%. And then we see from this wick high down to this wick low here, another 40%. So those are indeed overall greater, pretty nasty corrections in the context of an uptrend. So a bull market, in other words. So in other words, there is potential that Bitcoin can reverse right here, right now. If it holds that 21, confirms that daily bullish divergence, it could be looking good. However, I do hesitate a little bit, and I think to myself that this is likely fairly common knowledge. A lot of people have probably noticed that. I mean, if a Muppet like me can spot it, then likely there's a lot of institutions looking at that, a lot of whales looking at that. So maybe we do see a quick washout to the downside. And so if that's going to be the case, what could be an area of interest. Well, if I come back out here to a daily, and you see this purple line right here, this is the 200 EMA. And that's a pretty interesting moving average to pay attention to. If I stick a horizontal in on that at 42,283, we can see that it comes into confluence with the top of this last move right here when we look back in time. And this move here ended up producing a fairly large correction down to about 31% and gave us a really notable pivot point on the market here. And I believe that shows up on a weekly as well. So if I come back out to the weekly, indeed, it does. So some people might be, arguing that we're taking out the last, higher low for Bitcoin right here. But I usually like to go off the really defined pivot points, and this right here is the last major pivot point on the market. And you can see the top side of that before it began that correction. Well, it's coming in around 42,283 there. And so maybe, just maybe, Bitcoin wants to quickly wick down there, hit that before reversing, or it could come down there, slump a little bit, trade sideways, and really shake those diamond hands out of the market. Watching the diamond hands become the paper hands if Bitcoin decides to take that route. But those are two scenarios that I do see. Bitcoin could just simply reverse right here, right now. Could even just wash out to the downside, freaking everybody out, hitting that area right here. We see that the 200 EMA is coming into confluence with that on a daily. So those are the two scenarios I'm going to be paying attention to. Of course, I don't have a crystal ball. Sunday's a very unusual day, especially around the weekly candle body closure, as those whales get all kinds of whaling going on. And then, of course, we have to survive Monday as well. But by Tuesday, I think we're going to have a pretty good idea as to what's going on. As long as Bitcoin doesn't do anything crazy here, I think the alts are going to continue to pop. And we are seeing some very positive price action from lots of great altcoins right now. Anyways, thanks so much for coming by and checking out this video. Hopefully you found that helpful. Looking forward to seeing the next one. And until then, have yourselves a powerful day.